about it is that everybody that's coming through the home, he's really, because a lot of people will say, how do you do it? We don't. We have to rely on God. Everybody's different. Everybody come with their own gifts and talents and issues and different things. And if you're a parent, whether you're a parent of birth kids, adopted kids, or foster kids, you know that every one of them are different. And so you have to do things in a different way. And so really even coming in tonight, when he asked me that when we do this mental health forum, I do want it to be just open discussion, and really just our heart. Because as a people, if we're looking at the body of Christ, not only as the body of Christ, but also as a culture, as a Black culture, we're seeing more and more people commit suicide. And we're seeing a lot of mental health issues, and people are ignoring it. And we're calling for a number of reasons. So I'm excited about this topic. I'm excited about being here and just having you all engage in these conversations. These type of conversations aren't easy, right? Because nobody wants to admit that either they have an issue or they know somebody directly that have an issue. And so the biggest thing tonight is that I want you to walk away and whatever stigmas or myths you had, I want that to be gone. I want it to be where you support the mental health sector, the community, the people around you that may be suffering in silence because of fear of what has been said. We grew up in a world where they was considered crazy, right? There was no in between. You see somebody, girl, she crazy down the road or whatever, and nobody ever really properly engaged us in that conversation. And I think we got to do a better job of that. Even myself, sometimes when I find myself saying, "Oh, girl, she crazy," I try to stop using it even in that setting, even though I'm not using it in a mental health type of way, because I want to be able to take this thing off. We need to have people come to the church. Not only do they get prayer, but they look at you and say, brother, I've been suffering from bipolar for years, and I need this type of support. And so hopefully tonight we can kind of bring that to light. But I think really just to kick us off, I kind of want to know a little bit about what your experience have been like. Want to interact it, but what has your experience been like with mental health and faith, mental health in general? What have you heard? Do you think it's a cultural background that played a huge role in the way you look at mental health? So, yeah.
I like that. I would start by saying I was always taught that it was a demon. We're gonna lay hands on it and we're gonna cast it out of his head. That's what I was taught. So when people had mental health issues or mental illness, a lot of times through religion, it was swept under the rug of prayer, but never really dealt with effectively. And I know in the Black community, when you start talking about counseling, well, you better get somewhere and go on about your business. It was like, taboo to talk about counseling in the Black home. So we want to kind of kill that stigma and talk a little bit tonight. All right? Did anybody have something they wanted to say before we jump into a couple of questions? Okay. All right. I had a couple of questions that I wanted to bring to the forefront to Ms. Astrid. We're ready to jump into it. All right? So the first thing I wanted Astrid to deal with tonight is what is the difference between mental health and mental illness?
Well, that's a good one. When I saw the questions and I was going through, I do want to, before I answer that question, just start out with just a few little facts to show you how common these things are. So facts, 1 in 5 American adults experience mental health issues. So if you look around, 1 of us, 2 of us, 3 of us in here have experienced some type of mental health issue. A matter of fact, 44 million Americans suffer a year with the mental health issue. 1 in 6 young people experience a major expressive depressive disorder. 1 in 20 Americans lived with a serious mental illness such as schizophrenia, bipolar, or major depression. Suicide is the leading cause right now in the United States for death. The second leading cause among children aged 10 to 24.
Wow.
It's just something for us to meditate on, right? Like it's really like, it knocked the pause in you when you hear it like that, because our youth and we see everything that's going on in the world. Half of all mental health disorders show their first signs before the age of 14. And 3/4 by age 24, but only half receive treatment. So I used to always say that even with the prisons, if you go and you start really doing some interviews and you start looking, right? You start asking them how many were diagnosed and untreated, or how many was just never, they sought help, or they was crying out for help in a certain setting and never got it. Mental disorders can be biological, genetic, chemical imbalances. It can be induced from trauma. So a number of ways. But it is a myth. I do want to say this, that children, the myth is, children do. It says children don't experience mental health concerns, and they do. We bad now. Are there bad children? Absolutely. You know what you say, okay? But then there's also that thing where, are you paying attention or are you judging? When have you looked at the mom at the grocery store and asked her, what can you do to help, while she got a screaming baby because you don't realize her baby is autistic? But we staring her down instead of saying, how can we help? I think just those type of things. People with mental health problems, this is a myth. People with mental health, and this is one we really gotta hit. People with mental health problems are violent and unpredictable. Did you know that most are not? Any more than those without a mental health issue. However, 3 to 5%, actually, you talk about 3 to 5% maybe about. That's a very small number from the 44 million who deals with some type of mental health, right? And so we go on, actually they are more likely to be the victim of a violent crime. People picking on them, because like they're homeless, or, some instability that has led to different situations. The other one is people with mental health needs cannot keep a job or function at work. It's a myth. Person beside you might be getting the help they need, so you don't know they have bipolar. Person in church next to you could be praising their way through something, but too afraid to really share their testimony that they do have a serious mental health disorder. Then the other one is there's no hope for people with mental health problems. That's a myth. That something's wrong with therapy or self-help. Saying it's a waste of time, it's a myth. And then saying that preventive services don't work, it's a myth. Think about some of the kids that we see that if they were getting the help that they needed at the age of 3 and 4, and then where they are now, if that's swept under the rug. And so, because you get to a certain age, they don't want the help. You are correct. You get them to teenage years, it's very hard because that thing nobody's talked to them about it. It looks bad to them, so they don't speak on it. So now what is it? So mental health is your overall well-being, right? So like when somebody asks you about your mental health, like, how are you today? Adrena, how are you today? Angela, I'm talking about your overall mental health, right? Like when you walk in the door, your overall mental health, the holistic version of you is your mental health. That your emotional stability is locked up in your mental health. Spiritual, psychological, the ability to cope with normal life stressors. Your mental health relies on that. That's your mental health. And so sometimes we get to a place to where our mental health is not good, right? That emotional well-being. I'm overwhelmed. I cannot handle life stresses right now. So therefore, it's messing with who you are holistically. That's your mental health, your mental well-being. Mental illness is a diagnosable mental disorder. So people started to take the stigma off. When you say mental illness, what do people think? Oh man, they go back to that crazy part, right? You hear mental illness, right? Right, Pastor? I mean, like you hear somebody with a mental illness, you think Because nobody really wants to frame that anxiety and that depression as a mental illness. Nobody wants to frame it as that. We call it in the Black community, she had a nervous breakdown. You know, and so what happens is she had a nervous breakdown because we won't say the person was depressed. Pastor, we gotta take it. And so what happens is a person is afraid to tell you what's really going on with their overall holistic being, because I'm afraid that you may judge me based off of that, right? And so when you get a diagnosis, though, the mental illness is the intensity of that thing, the duration of that thing. And so are you diagnosable? So if you're sad, which is why they do surveys now when you go, right? You hit the survey and you sad more than 2 days a week, 3 days a week, because they're hitting those lists of things so that they can have some preventive measures. You know, now the doctors are excusing you because they're actually asking your teenagers, are they feeling suicidal? Have they had thoughts of suicide? And it's a shame that they ask the parents to step out to ask your kids those questions, because it's not spoken up in the house, right? Because we mixed up with that. And the reality of it is mental illness is also depression. And it's okay if you want to call it mental health issues. Now they're literally go hand in hand, right? Mental health. And so if it sounds better, then you did a mental health issue. But we got to start using the right connotation. It's like, you know, so what we do is we say nervous breakdown instead of, no, she's dealing with depression, or I have anxiety. Because the reality of it is, we know, oh girl, you ain't got anxiety. Well, but if I don't got it, how do I know what I'm gonna pray for? I can't tell you what to pray for if I'm denying that thing exists, right? And so you said it earlier when you said, you know,
that's the danger of shouting over sanity.
Yes. Come on.
Being played and you shout over a person's literally dealing.
Then that person go home and you're like, man, I thought they were good. I ain't heard from them in weeks. Because they too afraid to really tell you what's really going on. And so now don't get me wrong, their shout is probably real, right? They really want to shake this thing. But ain't nobody asked, everybody thought it was good. Because they shout, and that's the reality of it. And I said, you know, what happened to those days where, and some churches do it as the body, where you come up to get saved. There are some people, and I say it all the time, you deliver right on the spot. I mean, like, you don't go back to that thing. But we also know those are what we consider a miracle, right? Like a person, but then we got the people that's in the process. And we wonder why people go back to doing the exact same things. Who called them that week after they gave their life to the Lord? Who did a checkup? So who doing mental health checkups on you? Because I could be in the middle of repeating what it was I was dealing with when I got saved, but ain't nobody calling me to check on me. But I know that if Sister Angela called me, and if Sister Drink, you know, if you call me, I was like, I was just about to do that. So now I'm starting to, how you doing this week, sister? You know, I know you gave your life to the Lord, and we didn't really talk about your struggles, but I want to check on you. But those are the type things that we're getting away from. You know, I mean, let's just be honest. We all doing it now. Bow your head and raise your hand. Close your eyes, and then they walk out. And I'm not criticizing anybody, because we do it because it do get more people in the body. Because people, but again, what happens if we're gonna be unashamed of the gospel? You know, even if it's, hey, tap your neighbor and see if they give their life to the Lord today, and see if they're willing to give you some information. So we're letting them walk out the door without that support, right? So just those little things, and which I'll get into more of what we can do as a body. But yeah, so mental illness is diagnosable. The intensity of it, the duration of it, does it impair your functioning? It's a combination of stress. You know, I like to say sometimes you can have the thinking, the mood, the behavior, it all go together. Sometimes it may be just in your thinking. But sometimes it can be a combination, and then that's when it gets into a mental health. And when we're not talking about it is when you hear of people going into, you know, situations where the grief is so unbearable, right? Well, because nobody gets help for it. We're gonna pray our way through that grief. It's gonna get better tomorrow. And if anybody in here has dealt with that, they know that that's so not true. The support and all of those things that came, the prayer worked, but the prayer also of the people in the body was listening, they see the support that the person needs to carry that forward. So yes, prayer works. Prayer changes things. I'm a living witness. I changed my whole life literally. Like that. You know, was partying one night, went to church, felt the Holy Ghost move, never went back to clubbing and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So like, I do know that prayer works, but we also know that was probably prayer from their grandma had prayed for years. You get what I'm saying? Like, they was on their knees. What we saw was a miracle, but to look back, you're like, I've been praying for that all the days. Every time you went somewhere, but why are we not treating mental illness like that? Why we ain't buddying up? But we'll buddy up with accountability and we'll tell people how to be single, right? You need to couple up if you're dating. But you got mental illness, don't nobody want to talk about it. So those are those, so yeah. All
right. Now let's move forward a bit. How do we recognize the signs of these mental health issues?
So, number one, being very active in people's lives for starters. You gotta know, are people being their authentic self around you? Because typically, if they're allowed to be their authentic self around you, then you can technically see these signs. Because sometimes those signs, when people really say, like, I didn't see it at all, and that is true because you didn't really know the person. And that's where getting to know the person, and asking questions. And so withdrawal is isolating. So if you got one of your people, you're like, hey, something different. I'm gonna check on you. Are we doing better? And I'm using Angela as an example because that's something. Hey, girl, I haven't seen you about 2 weeks, and now that even now still trying to check on each other, even with the transition. Because she's still my sister in Christ. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, hey, how you doing? How you feeling? Doing those little small checks. Because if that person is withdrawing, something's going on. Right? So that first sign is, did the person, if we're talking about the church, is the person backing away from duties that they were very much, they was involved in. And you may see it as rebellion, they just don't want to do that. No, something probably going on. Was there a trigger that caused them to isolate? And so looking for those isolation. Another one is the extreme highs and lows. That's a confusing one. You got a person, they high one day, like literally, then you meet them, they just as low. If that's a pattern, it's something you can check on. Because yes, there's a such thing where a person's high all the time, and they giggling, and they're gonna hit a low. But we talk about, is it extreme difference in their behavior, in the extreme highs and the extreme lows, in that, because you can see that. And so that's why a lot of times, even when you hear people, even let's say committing suicide, somebody else say, well, I just talked to them and they just left the church or whatever, Well, a lot of times it's because that facade, and so you left, or you just left. I just saw them at the gas station. I didn't even know they were going through that, and those type of things. So just that pulling away, that those extremes, those highs, those lows, I've seen it where people will laugh, man. But then what are they doing? Are you paying attention to when they're not in those? Because if they're just doing that in your setting, and you watch them in other settings, there may be an issue. Excessive worry and fears, right? More so than they used to do. They're worried about a lot of stuff, right? Excessively. You should start seeing, they worried about from, if they go outside, like the fears that they're starting to have. That's a huge symptom. And sometimes, especially with the environment we live in and the atmosphere, you can turn on the news and it changes a person. With kids, we saw it with COVID. Not only were they isolated, but the news was feeding so much stuff, racial tension, political divide. And these kids were shrinking back, and the anxiety was so real because they left school being normal kids, right? Talking to their friends and everybody talking, and they came back, and now we in a political divide. We COVID, you can't touch each other. You got to be 6 feet apart anyway. And so it really started getting to them because they already have their own issues within themselves, right? And so now you don't have anybody but a parent that's still trying to go to work. You still trying to do these things, and so you may be checking on them, but life goes on for you. But they weren't having that interaction like they were having. So that isolation part of it. Strong feelings of anger. Sleeping issues, eating issues. You're no longer eating, or you're noticing somebody's sharing these things. You're like, man, I just ain't been able to sleep. Well, you want to ask more questions because we do know that it could be because the Lord is really having us pray. And I think sometimes that's where, as believers, when we in touch with the hope, that is the truth. You're like, oh man, the Lord got me up praying, and that probably is true, right, for us. But how was that person's faith? Are you automatically assuming that that's where they're at in their faith? You know, that the Lord is keeping them up, and those such things. And so I think just being able to listen, you got to be very open to listening. And so growing inability to cope with daily life or problems. You know, you start retreating. You're probably not responding to daily things like you used to. So things are a little different. And so just unexplained things that you're seeing, you know, some things are unexplained, and children that maybe grades are dropping. You know, you start to see a lot of these things. And I think even with kids, again, with COVID and with dealing with different things at home, I think even like maybe your brother Gabe, I guarantee you Mr. Gabe can probably tell us different things that he sees, right? And some of these things are issues that may never be taken care of, maybe because a parent don't have time, or they're sweeping it under the rug. So it's a number of things. Because a mental health issue, guess what it does? It takes you away from the norm. You gotta go to appointments. You have to do these things. So sometimes in the community, when the community is not well supported, or that family is not well supported, these single parents get docked from work. Did you realize those things? You work at the chicken plant and your parents go home. You done lost your job, so now that's where a lot of the yelling and the screaming may be going on, or different things going on in the home, right? When it's truly a mental health issue with their child, but one that they really in their mind they want to do it, but it's like, I don't got time for this boy, I don't got time for this girl, so you're disciplinary, but just those signs that you see. And so I think also when you see those signs, how comfortable are we with approaching a parent and saying, hey, do you need some, hey, like, do you need any help? Because if a parent feels judged, what are they gonna do? Shut down, or either stop coming, to church because people are looking at you. So those are just a lot of things we can just really look at and see if people, how the person next to you is responding, paying attention to your neighbor. But and that means connection.
Listen, I want to ask a question right here. I'm noticing a lot of Christians are dealing with anxiety. What are some practical things that they can do outside of prayer to help?
Turn the TV off. I mean, like, sometimes, and I'm gonna get to that self-care part of it, but that may have to be part of your self-care plan. If you know that you're in a moment where you are psychologically or emotionally responding to things in a way that you will respond, then those are definitely some things that and so are you responding to those things in a different way? So I think I always say a good thing, journaling is good, because sometimes you can go back and look at the pattern because you may not know what's going on, but I think the excessive, so what it does when you journal, you can go back and look at the pattern of things that's been happening. So if these things are bothering us more, right? So you are, it's the unknown. And so I think although I will say prayer is good for the believer, connection, accountability, because a lot of that is your worry is usually directed towards those people you care about. So that so usually it starts that way. Like, I mean, because even as a believer, or is this gonna change, or is this gonna change, or if I walk out the house, we do turn the TV on and we see school shootings and we see these things. And so yes, prayer is good, but the connectivity. So how can I connect it? What are those things I'm more worried about? So am I now more worried about my family or my kids? Well, okay, let's get us an app. Let's do something where we're talking to each other. Let's get us a code. So you have to kind of do what works best. You have to first identify what's causing the worry. Where did that creep in? And then sometimes you have to turn that thing off. And I'm gonna be honest, like sometimes I have to do that. So, and it's a catch-22. Sometimes you don't know what's going on in the world. Somebody be like, girl, there was something yesterday, and you're like, what is it? Well, because I know how it may affect my mental health, I'm gonna have to trust the other people to be in, because I'm praying, but I'm gonna have to trust the other people to get more information. So because maybe they in a better position. So I'm gonna pass it this time. It's okay for me to say, you know what, Pastor Fred, on this one, I may not be able to do that because I'm not really sure if I'm in a position to be able to handle that right now. And self-awareness is the best awareness, because only you know you like you know you. And so if something is a trigger for you, you might not need to go to this funeral that time. You might not need to go to so-and-so them house if that's a trigger for you and something gonna creep back in. You may need to be honest to say, you know what, Pastor, I'm gonna sit this one out. I'm praying and I'm gonna stay prayerful, but I noticed the door with that. I noticed a little trigger with that. And until I work that thing out with the Lord, then I'm gonna probably stay away from that for a bit. So that's what my advice would be, to write it down, see what the triggers are, identify those triggers. Again, my favorite thing is self-awareness is the best awareness. Gabby's smiling because that's me, Gabby. But listen, she's smiling. She knows that's my thing. Because when you are self-aware, that's when you can really do something about your mental health, your mental well-being, toxic relationships, healthy relationships. All of that go hand in hand with your mental health. So guess what? It may be okay not to talk to your brother or sister in Christ. Not talk. When I say not talk to them, I mean allow them to trigger you. You're gonna walk in love, but it may be a season where you walking in love and y'all might not be going to dinner together because God is working on something in you. I didn't say it was your brother and sister in Christ. It may be that what's in you that's triggering you that way. Do you need to be removed from that thing? Because then it becomes toxic for you and you lack peace. And so in order to get peace, sometimes we got to pull away.
I got you.
So, yeah.
So what part can the church play in helping with mental health issues?
All right, man. Change the attitude and beliefs about mental health. What has your attitude been about mental health? What you previously knew about mental health? If any of us were in here, and now there's some people that say, oh, I'm gonna take a holistic, view. But when the doctor tell you something wrong, how many of y'all don't go get the cast to fix the bone? Anybody? I mean, I'm just curious if you done waited it out and said, no, I'm gonna let we're gonna pray this one through right here. I'm just gonna be in this pain for 2 weeks. Anybody? Because we gonna get it fixed. The doctor tell you that you have cancer, guess what? You're going to figure out what's the best treatment plan for that cancer. Why we don't do that with mental health? Because now we'll come and we'll fast for some cancer. Y'all know so-and-so got cancer. And don't get me wrong, I think cancer is something that is rampant and that we do need to be fasting about, because the enemy is using that to take people out left and right for starters. But mental health also. But we'll disconnect the two. They can't be disconnected. We will pray about things And again, we'll pray about the wholeness and the sickness, but are we coming together to pray about mental health? Are we? But we'll come together as a body and we'll pray for Sister So-and-so who laying in the hospital and maybe she had a heart attack. And a lot of that comes from, too, the privacy, because we are a culture of private people when it comes to the mental health sector. So we got to change our beliefs and attitudes about it, because the moment that you, as we do as a body, accept that, then the people that have those issues will start coming. Yeah. But because this is what happens, I identify, we so quick for the people that we can see with the mental health disorder. Or we got all the ushers and the security team, they look strange. What about the person sitting next to you that don't look strange, brother? But he got some issues. And those are the things that when we change our attitudes and beliefs about it, we would just assume that every 1 in 5 person that come through that door got a mental health disorder. Because when we do that, then we're treating it. We treat everybody the same. You know, and that's kind of what we have to take. We got to take these kids. We got to take our youth serious. You know, when it comes to those things as well, because the way we, and I always say this, the way my mama, your grandmama, they way wasn't wrong. But when you get a better understanding and knowledge, we have better technology. We have all these things. Then we do have to do things a little bit different, right? But what I mean by different is, I don't mean, you baby, the oil is real. You need oil, okay? You need oil. And so, but also what I'm saying is the accountability. The church, we can be more accountable to each other, and not just on Sundays and Wednesdays. You know, I think if all of us took that serious, a key role, what y'all doing tonight, you take, I mean, if you're educating your people, if we do more than that, so you say, well, we can talk about it. It's kind of, for instance, if we never talked about, we all in this room know that there's division in the United States, right? We all know that there's racism is real, right? We do. We can act like it ain't. But do it make it go away? No, or we can come together and we can say, you know what? We about to pray this thing until we see something different. And yes, that is a prayer issue, but it's also a connectivity issue, because we're coming together to pray for that thing. And then we're leaving and we're making people more comfortable. So when we change our beliefs and our attitudes about it, you know, when we change the attitude that a person ain't crazy, because actually, like I said, 3 to 5%, like the number of violent mental health people is so low. That's why when you see them, and I see them walking down, there's this guy, maybe 2 or 3 people in the enterprise, they mind their own business. There ain't nobody scared of them. I mean, literally, like they minding their own business, right? But it is a mental health issue, and it is something, but because we can vividly see it, that's who we want to help a lot of times. And so we got to be careful with that. So I think that's one. Supportive relationships, and I already said this, supportive relationships, but y'all, this is the one that's going to really, meaningful connections. When we make meaningful connections, people are more likely to allow you in, right? Because that connection is not meaningful. You know, and that, we ain't talking about just coming in, hey, so how you doing? Glory to God. Praise be, you know, so we all know this language, right? We know the language, but when do we get it in its meaningful connections? And you be like, girl, you all right. I don't do that to like that. And I'm good, girl, who you talking to? But you gotta be able to make meaningful connections. You gotta be able to make the meaningful connections with a dreamer or Kathy. You gotta be able to, because when you allow, and then that person is running. That person is running from a dream. Lord, they go first lady. I'm going, baby, chase her down, Adrena. Chase him down, Pastor Frank. You get what I'm saying? First lady, you because something is going on that they don't want you to see. Make that connection, because now we can be prevented. Don't wait till they go out and they're calling you, and then I saw it, but I didn't want to. No, we gotta go after them. Did y'all know that the way I grew, and Kathy gonna know this, but like, cause we had the Harriet and we had the Harriet Terrors that you know what they would do to you. You try to go that way, you come that way, no, you had to do. Something ain't right about your spirit, something going on. I don't know what it, but they put a foot in your back because they was gonna make that connection, right? And it wasn't just, just for them to be saying something to you. These are people who was gonna only speak to you when the Lord showed it to you. And I ain't gonna let you running that way, but it was the people that put their foot in your back. Those are those connections that you make that change your life forever. That you're willing to say, hey, I've been struggling with bipolar for years now. And I won't take medicine because people think that when I take medicine, this is wrong. When you make meaningful connections, then you lay it down because you allow people to be their authentic self. Do you want to go in the room with your kids? Let's not, we all got kids in here. If your kids, we say it all the time, hey, you can talk to us about anything. Can they really? Because, so we have to learn to notify our face, right? Like, yeah, they shocked. Okay, son. Yeah. And we have to get like that with the people that God sent to us. Instead of our face getting real big, it's like, okay, God can, we got you. Instead of the facial expressions before you ever. So we got to notify our face in those issues, but those meaningful connections, and then also promoting resources. And this is what I mean by that. If somebody come up to get prayer and they tell you what they need prayer for, let's not leave it right there. Let's get them to somebody. Let's say, hey, we got some resources in the bag. Or I got somebody that I know that I can call because you just told me that you have that issue, and I want to connect you with a believer that does therapy. Okay, so not only now that's when it goes beyond prayer, and that's where we get when people say, you can still, because I think when we get a stigma that prayer don't work, but prayer does work. But did you hear them? So now that they came up here, when you take them to the back and you write down that information and you see how much they're willing to give you and how much they will allow you to give them those resources. So I heard you say that that's something that you're dealing with. Because guess what? Somebody got problems in their marriage. Guess what we're doing? We're trying to find a pastor. We're going to find Pastor Fred and First Lady because, honey, they going through some stuff. And we're going to get them counseling. And that's what I'm saying. But when we got somebody that got a mental health issue, everybody put hands off. And I think that's how it starts, because you got to remember a lot of the families are breaking up because we're not dealing with issues at the core of it. People are leaving spouses because they do have a special needs kid, and because of the special needs kid, they can't handle it. And that shouldn't be happening in the church. The rate of divorce right now in the church is at the highest it's ever been. It's probably if not higher than the world, because we're not addressing issues.
It's funny you said that, because there's a part of the church ministry that we haven't launched yet, but the Lord gave it to me back in 2013, where our church is called COP. So everything about the church is themed around the COP. So we have this thing where we have POs. Instead of them being probation officers, they are purpose officers. What we're going to start doing is, when a person gets saved, we're going to assign somebody to them for that first full year. All right. Then when you have people with issues, we want to find someone that is mature in the faith, that can partner with that individual, that can be very confidential, to help them walk through issues. So we're going to have some POs set up around here to help some people walk through some issues in life. One thing we're about to start doing is counseling for the community. Shameless plug. We start that Sunday for all the single people. That ain't me. Yes. I'm going to teach some good stuff to the singles. But nevertheless, I love the idea of walking with an individual through something. We're going to be very hands-on and active and proactive about that around here. As I lead into my last question, how do we maintain good mental health?
Well, I think for starters, literally, my hat's off to you. I think when you say, hey, we're gonna start walking with somebody, and then the confidential piece of it, Because if they got that person, then that's their person to confide in. And then that person is probably only bringing it to that select few of their leaders. So you get a system going, and that person feels safe. But I would say, for starters, really, that good mental health, again, it starts with your own self-awareness. What do you need to take away? What are you doing that's not even this? Sometimes we got so many distractions going on in our life, and really those distractions even take us away from the people that we were connected to, which is designed by the enemy. So we get distracted. And so sitting down, what are those things you good at and you love? We get so busy now, we won't even, I used to love to read, but I ain't read in 2 years. Well, self-care is probably not being done. For starters, for our community, go to the doctor. Can we start there? Go get you a checkup. Because if you're in that checkup, that physical checkup can lead to a lot of other things, because they're checking. Your doctors are like, they know, right? They practice, they are trained to find out. When you go for a physical, they're going to find out about the mental as well. Your goal is to be honest with them. You see where I'm coming from with that? So for starters, we got to get more, especially our males. Because actually, although the mental health, and when we talk about the mental health treatment, you talk about Black women and Black men utilize that treatment far less than the rest of the world. And that's an issue. So I think for starters, our self-care starts with being able to go to the doctor. Because I think sometimes if you start, remember, if you got a chemical imbalance, that ain't you, right? So you start acting different ways. Chemical imbalances, cancer has caused the chemical imbalance, and people been, man, she just out of character. Ain't nobody asked her, but then when that person do go to the doctor, stage 4. They got 2 to 3 weeks to live because nobody confronted the issue and said, hey, you just ain't like yourself. But if you think about it, if a tumor is pushing against that side of the brain that causes, these different reactions, that's just like with the hypothalamus. So our hypothalamus in our brain is that pleasure center. And so our kids are going to, substance use or different things that they can get addicted to because it's the pleasure center. And we're like, well, what's happening? Well, because in order for that pleasure center to keep working and operating the way it needs to, they need more and more and more of it. So if we can start with that physical thing and exercise, and I would just say, do a self-care checkup on yourself. How well are you doing at taking care of yourself? Take those few minutes, Mom, to go get your nails done. People sometimes ask me, what's your self-care? I said, sometimes I just go to the grocery store by myself. Literally. Because it's self-care don't have to be this, we're going on this long weekend, and I'm going to plan this, and I'm going to plan this. Communicate and say sometimes, hey, you know what? I just need a good night's sleep, man. My bed is cat in the bed. Hey, I need a good night's sleep. Y'all, can y'all help society? But again, that's that connection to you, having those people in your life. But I will say, definitely, your self-care is the most important part. You remember the saying that people like, listen, if you die today, they're gonna replace you tomorrow. But we go around sometimes and we think that we're irreplaceable. And we see it in pastors and first ladies, and we see it in them. And when I say this, I'm not saying this in a selfish way. When I say self-care, we have to be good at our own self-care, or you are good for nobody else. That's why it starts with you. You probably say, well, why self-care? Everybody's so wrapped up in self-care. Well, because when you care for you, you can care for others. You can't care for people from a dry place, because you're gonna burn out and be dead somewhere. And you know what y'all gonna hear at your funeral? Oh, she so served everybody. Well, what did she do for herself? I don't know, girl, but she looked bad every time I saw her, and ain't nobody can tell you. It's the truth, because people will do that. And it's okay, but I say communicate that. We have and I'm just telling you, like, I'm just open. We talk about sabbaticals. Me and Angela, we have a sabbatical. Y'all, there's nothing wrong with a healthy sabbatical. Healthy, I say. Because your sabbatical should not be, when I talk about connections, don't disconnect from the people that love you. When you disconnect, when you making yourself care, you're disconnecting from things that disturb your peace. That's what you disconnect from, because you can't be a healthy you with something that's disturbing your peace. And then also, let's start, like I said, in that family unit, within your home, asking the people around you, get comfortable with asking them, are they okay? I am so comfortable going in the room and asking my kids, you good? Yeah, you done had thoughts, hey, you thinking about hurting yourself? Being so direct to where then they can have that conversation, and I can hear my child say, well, yeah, I thought about it, but I would never do, because now we can have that open dialogue. And so now I can continue, but don't wait till they're a certain age and then you start doing it because it's super uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable in my home now for me, and they be like, we know, Mom, you're okay if we need medicine or we need to talk to somebody, because at some point I might not give you a choice if I see it. So just being to that place that where we can just be that deep with each other and going there and being able to do that and just loving on each other. Y'all, I think that we get so wrapped up, I hear just the wonderful things going on here. Don't get so wrapped up in the world, because guess what, y'all? It got to start somewhere. So if everybody's divided, unity got to start somewhere. And what better place for it to start from here? And then, because now what has happened is the enemy have us so divided over so many issues, Pastor. So many issues. We can't agree on nothing, but we need to agree on Jesus' love. And he wants us all in our right mind and holistically whole, right? We can agree on that, because when you're holistically whole, not only now you're at a place where you can make good decisions. You can't make good decisions from a place when you're not whole. That's why people tell you there's no half and half in marriage. Your spouse can't show up 50% and you 50%, because Lord, what the other 50 is? Who they getting today? So a whole person make a whole person. So check in on even your partner, check in on your kids with their self-care, And so I'm gonna say, do a self-care evaluation. Anybody, if you had an appointment in the last year, call your physician. If you're starting to notice something in yourself, your sleep pattern, I do this so bad, listen, to where I check, I be like, okay, well, because I take some medicines or whatever, and I be like, well, I'm gonna change the medicine. I'm gonna take this. I see you gotta be about your own. I said, I'm not sleeping. Okay, so I added that one. Okay, so I'm gonna try taking that in the daytime, because something is off. You gotta be just that in tune. Because because as a result of that, I'm a better mama, and I'm a better daughter, and I'm a better sister, and I'm a better friend when I do a self-check care. I can do that better. I also know when it's time to step back. And so I would just say, Pastor, just encourage your people. And again, y'all are already starting. So really, this is really just about taking what y'all already know and going out and sharing that with the world. But that's going to be huge. So your self-care starts with you. So
listen, y'all remember I preached a message a couple weeks ago. It's crazy out here. You remember that? A lot of people don't understand why I'm doing this tonight, because we're so used to coming to church, preaching and teaching. I gave out over 500 scriptures last year alone. I give a minimum of 5 every Sunday, every Wednesday night when I teach. I gave out over 500 scriptures last year alone. Here's the thing. In the last days, there's going to be perilous times, difficult, violent, times of pressure. And here's the nugget for y'all tonight. Where the mind goes, the matters of life soon follow. Okay? So if your mind, your mental state is not strong in this hour, you can bet your bottom dollar that the matters of your life will soon follow your mind. Right? So what we did tonight was I wanted to take some time to let you hear some things, because I personally went through depression, didn't even know what it was, Pastor Gabe. I was so busy that I lost my boundaries. Come to find out, my wife was in Birmingham, it was like 2015. I got a sleeping headache, got passed out. The next thing I know, I started losing weight, didn't want to eat, didn't want to pick my Bible up. I wanted to go to church, but I was just, my God, limbo. I had no idea. But watch this, I kept just doing and doing, not knowing. When I went to the doctor, I was under so much stress internally that my liver was producing too much cholesterol. My cholesterol was 230 something when I got that. All right. My kidney levels was off. Everything in my body was off. He said, man, you smoke? I said, no. He said, looking at your chart, you look like you're a smoker, drinking, everything. But the fact of the matter is, I was still navigating, still serving, and had no idea I was depressed. And no, and then anxiety kicked in. Couldn't even watch a commercial with the heart attack pills and jump. I could freak out, turn it. Then I started hitting Dr. Google. Oh man, I got that. Oh, that's me right there. Oh, I felt that the other day. Then my mind, as you know, boy, started playing tricks on me, Kurt. And it started creating stuff. So where the mind goes, soon follows the matters of life. So I wanted you guys to hear this today, because maybe if it's not for you, maybe you have enough information now to go with your salvation that you can pull somebody else out. Right? Because with isolation, with the pandemic, contrary to popular belief, everybody has got a little bit selfish in this hour. Everybody. And as the church, we want to break the mold. And we want to form something that we can draw people and help them walk through their everyday life. Everybody, hearts and minds clear. Pastor, thank you for coming, hanging out with us tonight. Listen.
And I think you just said about that's why the Bible tells us about our mind. Renew that thing. I mean, that's what renew your mind, renew your mind. So, I'm a therapist who believes in therapy. So I go to the therapist. Okay? So I throw myself out there first. I'm a therapist, but I believe in therapy as well.
Be not conformed to the world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. In other words, there's no way you cannot conform without transformation.
That's good.
All right? So let's make sure we take very good care of our mental. All right? Listen, if you struggle, we've been to launch these POs. We're going to make sure we got some people that know how to pray, that know how to listen, and that know how to be there for them. With that being said, it's now time to worship God in the aspect of tithing and offering. We're saying we walk around, you don't see it, people up in the back. If you want to give virtually, we have to download our church app. We also have text to give. We got a whole bunch of stuff. Gifts.
Just so y'all can be reminded, I got this thing in the stage of Sunday, so all y'all.
She comes bearing gifts. Yeah.
So they say different things like beautiful.
You need that one up there.
What does it feel?
That one back up.
You be one of them.
Oh, okay.
Right now, you can do so. Everybody that's on the line, you can do so. Anytime to give tonight, it's now helpful you to do so. Brother Sam, we stand across of here. If you have an envelope, if you're giving cash or check, please fill out your envelope so we can give you the rest of your giving at the end of the year. Y'all know it's Father's Day. Mama A. Priest Mason. It's a man where we'll remember our woman. Y'all know that, right?
It'll not be nothing without a woman.
It's Father's Day. I'm gonna be real with y'all. I started preaching message off the boosters on the wipe it down, and I said, no, they ain't ready for it. But it was good. I woke up from a woman that took her hair and wiped Jesus' feet with it. I was going to teach something real strong there, but I'm going to hold that one. I'm going to hold that one. I got something good, though. Women out there want to flip. To work, I just want to flip it. But nevertheless, we want to thank Ashley for coming tonight. Thank Lonzo and these wives. Thank you for allowing your wife to come down and separate. I know you got the kids, you cook dinner and all that good stuff by yourself. I owe you big. All right. So with that being said, let's bless this offering. We're gonna get everybody out. Father, we thank you right now. Those that gave, we thank you that those that didn't have it but desire to give it. So Lord, we ask right now that you bless it for your kingdom agenda and your assignment. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Father, as we leave this place but not your presence, we ask that you keep us and protect us as we go on our different destinations. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Listen, I need every man, Church of Purpose, if you're watching those, if you don't see everybody here tonight, I know some people still out about. Every man, I need y'all to be suited up Sunday. We wearing suits. If you desire to go to the it's a father and daughter dance that my friend Pastor Calvin is holding. Father and daughter on Saturday. I'm going to take my little girl, get her dressed up. If you would like to know more about that, shoot me a text or call me. I think I'm missing one more. All right. If you're going with Lady A Saturday, meet here at the church. What time? At 9:15. All right. She will be preaching at a women's conference. If you're going with her, be here at church at 9:15. We'll also send our address out. There will be an outreach meeting following church immediately after I drop this microphone.